And welcome to Wednesday Night Slides number 62. Tonight's show is going to be two parts, actually. The first part is going to be a trip I took out to Illinois to shoot the last of the Santa Fe searchlight signals. And the second part is going to be catching up on some current events. We haven't done that for a while. So here we go. You all seeing the opening slide there? Title slide?
Yeah, I can see Toluca.
That's Toluca, yes. Okay. Back in July of 2017, the Santa Fe searchlight signals are coming down at a really rapid pace across Illinois. And I looked at the weather forecast and I saw like 5 days of sun out in that area. So I just jumped in the car and started driving. And the first day I drove all the way from New Jersey clear out to Peoria, Illinois, be in position the next morning. Well, actually, I drive a little bit more the next morning, but I wound up in Edelstein, or is it Edelstein, Illinois, which is a nice set of searchlight signals in both directions, protecting the crossover. So first train in the morning was a BNSF train, followed closely by a Union Pacific train. Real nice location. But down the ground level, I was on an overhead bridge there, down the ground level for a couple of shots. This is at Yost, Illinois. A couple of cantilever signal bridges. And you can see, if you look carefully, down tucked in just below the Yost sign, the orange cables where they're beginning to put in the new signals there. Also at Yost, cantilever on one side, signal mast on the other. This is at Williams, and here the searchlights are already out of service. You can see them on the cantilever bridges, turned away from the tracks, and the new tricolor signals are in service on the new signal bridges. Back to Edelstein again. This is the close to the west end of where I was for the trip. I covered about 75 miles or so of railroad trackage over 3 days out here. Looking the other direction, coming out of the sun. This is actually at West Chillicothe, that last shot, and then this shot here too, which had a shoving platform on the back of it. Still at West Chillicothe. And one more at West Chillicothe. Getting close to sunset now, so I went back to Edelstein. You can see in the background the overhead bridge I was on for the morning shots. And then I launched the drone for a couple of shots. And got this meet. And flew up and got a shot of the signals. Train coming out of the setting sun. And some glinty container cars. If anybody has any questions or comments, feel free to jump in. Easiest way to do it is just hit your space bar on your computer and ask your question. Now we're getting into nighttime. Still at Edelstein.
Hey, Steve.
Yeah.
That switch track coming off the main there at Edelstein, is that like a spur switch?
It's just used for maintenance away, as far as I know.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it serves any industry or anything. So I set up the strobes, and of course, the first train I got was going the wrong direction. And the second unit is in really good shape there with Bondo doors. And I got a leaser on the next train coming through. And then some BNSF power on this one here. I went to save money. I car camped on this trip. And one nice thing about car camping is that the morning sun before sunrise will wake you up. I'm in a motel, it's hard to drag my butt out of bed, but when I'm car camping, the first rays of light will wake me up and I'm ready to go shoot. So here we see a train just before sunrise at Edelstein. And here's the sun popping up. A little bit of glint on the train going east into the rising sun. And a westbound. This is over in Toluca. Signal bridge here on this end of the crossovers. Cantilevers on the other end. This is in Verona, and here they were actively in the process of removing the cantilever and putting up the new tricolors. So I couldn't get really close to this signal here. This is at the other end of Verona. Then over to Ancona, where a CSX locomotive came through on one of the trains. Back to Toluca. And then with the work crews gone, I went back to Verona for the night shots on the second night. The hard part of night shots like this is that you really want to get the train before it blocks any of the signal bridge. And this one here, I really did well with getting the arch of the cantilever signal bridge over top the locomotive. Mostly dumb luck. Another angle at Verona. Next morning, I started off in Verona. This is what it looked like coming out of the camera. But with a little bit of work in a light room, I was able to get this from my pre-sunrise shot. When I do stuff like this, I always expose to not blow out the highlights. So the subject matter could be really, really dark, but I wanted to keep the sky from blowing out because I can always, in digital photography, you can almost always save the shadows. But if you blow out the highlights, you can't get them back. And here comes the sun up.
Great shot, Steve.
Thanks. Still at Verona. I did break away from the signals for a couple of shots because this grain complex at Ransom, Illinois really intrigued me. So I passed up a couple of shots of trains passing signals that come coming through this complex here. And the signal box here still says Santa Fe Railway on it. Of course, BNSF took over Santa Fe back in '96. So here it is, 21 years later, it still says Santa Fe. I must have had a list of the signals still standing. I know I didn't search much for signals. This set here, I didn't know about. That was the only set I found I didn't know about. Everything else I seem to know about in advance somehow. And there's those that same signal box and the two intermediate signals on trackside posts, as opposed to the signal bridges. Another train back at Ransom going through the grain complex. Ferromex unit from Mexico, second one out. This is at Ancona. This is from the drone. And another train at Ancona. I think this was the last shot on the trip. It was about 11 o'clock in the morning of the third day of the trip. And from here, I just, I'm roughly a little bit southwest of Joliet, Illinois, just on the outskirts of Chicagoland. And from here, I just hopped in the car and other than gas and food, drove nonstop back home again and got home 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning next day. As a postscript, within the next month, every signal that I shot on this trip was gone. So I got out there just in time to get the last of these Santa Fe searchlight signals. Current events. We're going to start off back in March. I was beginning to get my feet back under me again and get out and shoot some trains. So I went to the brand new station in Claymont, Delaware. Here you see an Acela train heading south. Amtrak has the new Acela sets in, but they're still being tested and they're still finding problems. But it's almost official now that the Acelas are getting on short time. This is the new Claymont station. Southbound regional train behind a ACS 64. And a SEPTA Silverliner 5 set. The other end of the platform, this is a train going north. And back to another Acela set going south. And we're still at Claymont here for another southbound train. And northbound train, northbound SEPTA Silverliner 5 at Claymont. I had to go into Philadelphia in mid-March, I guess it was. And I was early for my appointment there, so I stopped off at I think it's 52nd Street on CSX's Philly subdivision in Philadelphia. And shot this CSX eastbound or northbound, depending on how you want to call it. Railroad, it's eastbound. This is my first Class 1 freight train after my surgery, so that was a milestone for me, getting back on my feet again. The reason I was in Philadelphia, though, was to go over to the Woodland shop of SEPTA. As part of its 60th anniversary, SEPTA is getting into the heritage thing. And one of the things they did was they put Kawasaki streetcar number 9000, the first Kawasaki delivered to them back in 1980. They put it back into the original as delivered wide stripe scheme with the big yellow, red, and blue stripe under the windows. If you look in the background, you can see what their new scheme is. Mostly solid white with just a small stripe above the windows. Here's all the Woodland shop guys who took part in getting the 9000 back into service again. The 9000 was in Woodland for its several year overhaul, probably the last overhaul it's going to get, because new cars are on order. They're still probably 8 or 9 years away. So the 9000 might actually hit 50 years of service before it's all over with. And the 9000 is already destined to go to a museum once it's retired. So the 9000 that day had to be ferried from Woodland down to the Elmwood car barn, the Elmwood Depot in southwest Philadelphia. So we had a friendly operator, and a couple of us photographers hopped on board, and off we went, and we did our own little mini photo shoot with the 9000 between the two car barns. There's a lot of enthusiasm with the shop guys who like doing this kind of stuff, and there's a few operators who really like the retro stuff. They're not quite rail fans, but they're interested enough to have some fun with them. So it's good. Except they can be a lot of fun. Enough rail fans in the right places to make things interesting. When we got down to Elmwood, it was kind of cool because like everybody in the shop came out, take a look at the car. They were all really, really impressed with it. The employees love this kind of stuff. So more of this can happen in the future. While I was down at Elmwood, I took a peek inside. Kawasaki cars for the Southwest Philadelphia routes. The PCC car is in for some minor work. And it's been going out on operator training trips. Elmwood handles the general running repairs, and between trip maintenance, Woodland does all the heavy work. Went back up to Woodland, where my car was parked. And before I left Woodland, I took a walk through the shop there. Here we see some of the work being done on the PCC2s to convert them over to PCC3s for return of service to Girard Avenue, which might happen the end of May. The end of May is when all the operators bid on new jobs. And it's a pretty good chance that they'll be bidding on running the PCCs on Girard Avenue in regular service. Here's a Kawasaki car from the Red Arrow side, the Media and Sharon Hill trolley. You can tell by the number. It's got the 3-digit number, 113. That indicates it's over on the Red Arrow division. But they get trucked up to Woodland as well for their heavy overhauls. And here we see one of the PCC2s getting ready to be stripped down for conversion for rebuilding to run on Girard Avenue. I went out in search of some NJ Transit heritage units, and the place I picked was Trenton, New Jersey. Hadn't been to Trenton for a few years, and there's some good angles from the platforms here. Here we see two Amtrak trains pausing at the station simultaneously. Here's an NJ Transit train pulling into the station as an Amtrak train is sitting on the other platform loading to go south, and the third another NJ Transit train off on the pocket track on the far right. Southbound to Salicet. And a northbound long distance train. There's I can see some sleepers back there in the consist. Probably one of the Florida trains. Amtrak used to run these HHP8s. They're electrified locomotives in regular service on the corridor. They were flops. But Amtrak still owes, or still has, they got them through federal grants, so they can't get rid of them. So what they're doing now is they're removing the pantographs from these HHP8s, and they're converting them to cab cars for Harrisburg service. So here you see when the HHP8s coming into Trenton on a test train. They're not quite in service yet on the Harrisburg line. The HHP8s earned the nickname of hippos, both because of their designation and the way they look. And a northbound Amtrak train coming through the Trenton station. Sell a set. Didn't see any heritage units that day. So on the way home, I stopped in at Berlin, New Jersey, on the Atlantic City line. Berlin is the oldest existing depot in New Jersey. No longer a station stop. Train stop at Atco, which is another mile or two behind the train here. But Berlin is one of the favorite photo props on the Atlantic City line. Here's a train going to Philadelphia from Atlantic City. This is back over in Claymont again. I had a NRHS meeting over in Wilmington and went to the Claymont station first. Got this southbound train, possibly the Crescent, given the time of day it was. Just overtaking a set of SEPTA Silverliner 4s in the background. And here come the Silverliner 4s. Pay attention for a second here to the paint scheme on these cars. The striping on the front, the striping on the window bands. Just kind of remember that for the future. It's not a quiz or anything, but you'll want to remember that. Here's a northbound train. And another southbound. The Battleship New Jersey, which is normally on display in Camden, was way overdue for its routine maintenance and needed to go to dry dock just across the Delaware over in Philadelphia at the Navy Yard. But to get into dry dock and to settle properly into dry dock, it needed its ballast tanks filled. And where it sits in Camden, the water is too shallow. So instead of going directly to Philadelphia, the ship went over to the port in Paulsboro, New Jersey, on Conrail shared assets and parked there to get its tanks filled before heading over to dry dock. It was towed over, but didn't go over under its own power. Well, anyhow, Conrail shared assets caught wind that the New Jersey would be visiting the port, and they arranged with Norfolk Southern to have the Conrail Heritage Unit brought in and posed alongside the battleship. Now, the port itself is high security, completely off limits. But this one shot here with a long telephoto lens was available by walking up a road bridge outside of the port.
Hey, Steve, by any chance on the right-hand side of that picture, is that the Roxborough Towers, radio towers?
Oh, good question. I don't know if you can see them from here or not.
I wouldn't think you could either, but
I don't, yeah, I would think they'd be too far away, but boy, I'm not sure what else they would be then.
they look tall enough to be
Yeah.
Roxborough Towers. That's pretty amazing if it is.
I noticed them going through the toll booth plaza at Walt Whitman Bridge the other day and wondered the same thing, Randy.
Gotcha. Have to check that out.
Just got an update, Steve. CBS Sports says it's 3-1 Phillies.
Excellent. Then I met up with Doug Scott and we watched some trains down in Perryville, Maryland for a little bit. This is down in Perryville. And then finally, the NJ Transit assigned a heritage unit to the Atlantic City line. The 4210 painted for the Erie came down and was in Atlantic City service for a couple of weeks. And there's a South Jersey rail fan group on Facebook that's really good. And it's got a few folks who are engineers or otherwise affiliated with the Atlantic City line. And they would be really good about posting what cycle the engine was going to be on for each day in the morning. So here is a shot of it. It's actually a going away shot. He's pushing, but he's just coming off the Delaware Bridge into Pennsauken, New Jersey, from Philadelphia on his way to Atlantic City. He has most trains have a meet at the Pennsauken station, which is just to the left. And because he had a meet there, we hopped in the car and drove real fast down to the next grade crossing or second grade crossing out of the Pennsauken station, and got this going away shot. A little bit cluttered, a lot of litter, but here he is pushing south. Oh, and he didn't have the meet here either. They changed the meet from here to Cherry Hill because the Philly bound train was running late. So we pulled up in a cloud of dust and he was right here, which is pretty close. McHugh Locomotive and Equipment is located over in Morrisville, PA. They do a lot of work, contract work, restoring locomotives, small locomotives for various operations, tourist railroads and the like. Well, whenever they finish a locomotive, J.C. McHugh, the president of the company, invites us over to do night photos of the locomotive before they load it on a truck and take it wherever it's going. The latest engine that they fixed was this 80-tonner for the U.S. Navy. So we did our night photos at the shop in Morrisville. He does narrow gauge and standard gauge work, so he's got 2 sets of rails going into the shop. That's JC, the president, up in the cab. Tommy Gears down on the steps. And the locomotive is equipped with this movable coupler. You see Tommy here working the controls. The coupler slides horizontally, right to left, to line up with whatever it's coupling onto. And it moves fast. It's surprising. Tommy touched the controls and zip, off it went. It was surprisingly quick. The Erie unit was still hanging around, so this is it going through the new station in Hamilton, New Jersey, on its way to Philadelphia. And then a few days later, I got it up at the Berlin station, which we saw a little bit earlier in the show here. On another day, I got it at the Pennsauken station. The Delaware Bridge is off to the left into Philadelphia. Going underneath there is the diesel-powered light rail river line between Camden and Trenton. And while, as I said, usually there's meets here. So while he was in the station going towards Atlantic City, he's pushing towards Atlantic City. The 4216 in the back there came by heading toward Philadelphia. Most of the line is single track with passing sidings. I went up to Morristown, New Jersey, to do a presentation for the Tri-State Railway Historical Society. And even though the weather was bad, I meandered up. My first stop was in West Trenton, where I got these Silverliner 5s. West Trenton is the end of the line for the West Trenton line out of Philadelphia. And Trenton Tower in the background is used now as the crew base for West Trenton crews. While a set of Silverliner 4s were in the station, this northbound or eastbound CSX train came rolling through. The way it's set up now, they've changed it around in the last 5 or 6 years. Now SEPTA exclusively uses a track on the right and CSX exclusively uses the track on the left. Prior to 6 or 7 years ago, whenever it was, freight and passenger mixed on the double track, and that was just not working very well. Here's a outbound train from Philadelphia coming into the West Trenton station. There's a more substantial building on the left-hand side. You can see part of the eaves there, but that's been either sold or leased, and there's a private firm in there now. My next stop was up in Raritan, New Jersey, where I got this outbound train from New York City. Actually, probably from Hoboken. Although it's dual modes, it could be either. On the old Jersey Central. And I got to Convent Station, which is actually where the meeting was. And pouring rain. I got this Metro North F40 leading a train heading for Morristown and Dover and beyond to Hackettstown. Metro North purchased some engines for the Port Jervis service that connects with NJ Transit service. But even though they're Metro North engines, they are mixed in with the NJ Transit engines and can be found almost anywhere. They don't keep the Metro North engines exclusively on the Port Jervis line. And another train coming into Convent Station in the rain. And some passengers have detrained, and the conductor's ready to give the high ball for the train to head on out. CSX has been running their heritage units quite a bit on a train that originates in Waycross, Georgia, and terminates in Selkirk, New York. Which means if a heritage unit is leading, there's plenty of warning for us folks up north here. And this was the case on this day when the Louisville and Nashville heritage unit was coming up. If it's on time, it gets through Baltimore's Bayview Yard early in the morning, usually hits the Wilmington, Delaware area around lunchtime. So I'm at Singerly, Maryland. Singerly is the name of the siding, which is actually located in Elk Mills, Maryland. And before the heritage unit showed up, this southbound or westbound train came rolling through. And then here comes the Louisville and Nashville engine on the eastbound. Went to a concert out in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And on the way out there, I stopped off, of course, at the Strasburg Railroad. They were running Norfolk and Western 480 number 475. And then from there, I went over to Lemon Place Junction, Paradise, Pennsylvania, which is the end of the Strasburg. There's 2 Amtrak trains scheduled through there right around noon. Here comes the westbound and the eastbound. These run with cab cars on one end, engines on the other. To get both trains with the engines leading is pretty rare. I almost always wind up with cab cars leading. And here's after the concert, I stopped off not far from Paradise and got this westbound train. And here's one with the ex-Metroliner cab car in the lead. As I said earlier, Amtrak is looking at replacing these cab cars with the depowered HHP8s, the Hippos, and they will eventually give you at least something that resembles an engine on both ends of the train. So no matter what shows up, it'll be a decent shot.
What time of day was the concert then, Steve?
3 o'clock start.
Wow.
Yeah,
The guys were awake?
Hmm?
The guys were awake?
They were awake, yes. Yep.
Did you take
Was it at the
Handsome Harry out? Did you take Handsome Harry out to see some trains?
No, they just got in that morning. So they were like off the bus and doing sound check right away. And then they had to pack up and heading for home. Actually, they're heading back to Nashville that night. So, went out after the Erie unit again. It was on. It's a cycle that had been printed out in the morning, had been shared, and on the New Jersey Transit app, if you click on how full is my train, it gives you the consist of the train. It doesn't give the locomotive number, but gives you the consist of the train. And I knew that the Erie unit had been paired with cab car 6011. So when that train left Philadelphia, I checked it, and yep, 6011 was leading the train. So that means when he gets to Atlantic City, he'll turn back with the Erie unit leading, and I'll get the Erie unit. So I drove over to Hamilton, about an hour drive over to Hamilton. And apparently they got down to Atlantic City and swapped out the consists. There's always a protection set down in Atlantic City. Apparently the Erie unit developed a traction motor problem. So the protection set was brought out with the 4213 reading. That's the former West Jersey and Seashore / Pennsylvania Reading Seashore Lines station in the background there. The New Hamilton station is about 3 blocks behind the train here. He's just pulling out of the New Hamilton station. Now, like I said, Silverliner 4s currently are painted in this scheme here with the striping on the front, the modern SEPTA S on the side, and stripes down the window bands. This is at the St. David's station on the Pennsylvania Railroad main line. The town of St. David's paid for the Historical Society there anyhow, paid for brand new Pennsy Keystone signs for the platforms. So here we are at St. David's, and here comes Amtrak's Pennsylvanian. Now, the reason we're at St. David's is, like I said, SEPTA is beginning to get into the heritage thing for its 60th anniversary. And they just released a Silverliner 4, number 280, set back to the way it looked when it was first used by SEPTA, when SEPTA was a contract operator for the Reading Company. 280 is the oldest Silverliner 4 on the property, delivered as Reading number 9018. And SEPTA removed the the stripes in the front and the stripes from the windows. Reapplied the Reading Diamond and the old SEPTA Meatball Herald. And this is the first of 4 heritage Silverliner 4s they're going to do. They got the decals in-house already to do Pennsylvania Railroad, Penn Central, and Conrail. So we'll have 4 heritage Silverliner 4s floating around eventually. And while he was in the station, this Keystone train from Harrisburg came blowing through. Hard to tell from this angle here, but you can barely see it, but you can see on the side, just before the first window, there's another Reading Diamond applied there where the window striping used to be. That brings us pretty much up to the present. Gonna sign off now. The next program will be on Wednesday, May 29th. That's after Memorial Day weekend. I'm gonna sign off here for the YouTube folks, and then everybody that's here on Zoom will take some questions and have some discussion. Stand by.